Rev up the DeLorean to 88 miles an hour and travel back in time with us as we revisit a pop culture classic that truly works in any era. I'm Leonard Maltin. Welcome to the Movie Guide, where today we'll be going back to the future.
Yes, it is the Movie Guide podcast here on the Four Finger Discount Network. I am Brendan Dando, joined right now by the two movie gentlemen here. We have one half of the Four Finger Discount Network, Mr. Guy Davis. How are you, sir?
Hello there, Dando. Doing very well, thank you.
And we are ready, of course, as Leonard mentioned in the intro, to go all the way back to the future. It's Mr. Leonard Maltin. How are you doing, Leonard?
I'm doing fine. I enjoy going back to the future, and I'll enjoy talking about it with you, Guy.
Indeed, yes. You know, Leonard, that new podcast sound you were looking for, well, listen to this.
Now, Leonard, you said you enjoyed going back to the future. You also enjoyed some recent events you attended, but they were also very exhausting. Do you want to tell us about those?
Well, I'm a fan of movies of the 1930s. I like old movies in general, but my favorite decade is the 1930s. I don't want to have lived then because it was the Great Depression. But somehow, in spite of that, Hollywood turned out so many great movies that decade. And with so many wonderful stars and creative, ingenious work by writers and directors and composers and artists of all stripes. And so I never tire of seeing or rediscovering films of that era. And I got to program 3 nights at Quentin Tarantino's New Beverly Theater, which is an old-fashioned grindhouse, as they used to call it, which shows his films and films from his private collection. But in this case, we borrowed 35 millimeter prints because that's all they show. They don't show any digital films there. He equates digital projection to television. Mm-hmm. You're not in a theater to watch television. You're there to watch movies. So I programmed 6 really rare films that you cannot find on home video and you will not find on any streaming service. And we had a wonderful turnout, very enthusiastic audiences. And it was a highlight of the year for me.
That's fantastic. It's one thing that I really dig about Tarantino as well. I mean, I don't think anyone denied the man's got a sizable ego on him, and I like that he's sort of set up his own cinema to highlight his own stash. But no, he's a real aficionado of film culture across the decades, and really wants to showcase that and showcase it through different voices and different lenses as well. It must have been a great thrill to be involved.
It was just wonderful. And this is inspired by a show that began 8 years ago at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And I immediately tried to interest some institution here in LA in taking that show, as they do with traveling art shows, or exhibits. And I couldn't get anybody to do it. And it's been festering in my mind all this time. And I finally, some light bulb went off somewhere in my system and said, why don't you try calling the New Beverly? And I did, and they were responsive, which is wonderful.
LA seems to, have it, well, of course it's going to have a film culture. It's the epicenter of American film, but it really seems to be embracing its history in a lot of interesting ways. You've got the New Academy Museum and also, things like the New Beverly and a bunch of other cinemas around town that are showcasing and curating sort of older material and classic material.
Well, yes, part of that is because there's so little new material to work with. So few new movies are being released. Fewer being made and fewer being released. And so that's created a inadvertent demand for encore showings. There's a company called Fathom Events that does once a month classic films, which I introduce, just so happens. And I've had several people come up to me over the last 4 or 5 days to say they saw my introduction to Blazing Saddles. Well, I'm delighted that you saw it, folks, and that you saw it in a theater. What could be better than watching a really funny comedy like that, surrounded by people laughing? It's ideal.
I'm not going to pride myself on a very silky segue here, but that does lead into how we're going to talk about Back to the Future, because my primary memory of seeing this movie was, of course, the first time I saw it back in 1985 in a very crowded cinema, the Forum Theatre here in Melbourne, Australia. Mm-hmm. And just the collective feeling of excitement and glee and joy and just absolute happiness to be there and experience this thing as it unfolded is one of one of my key movie going memories. It's just like, I think this is what I'd be chasing. If any time I go to the cinema, it's like, I want this kind of collective experience. And what was it like for you when you first saw it?
Well, you just described it, Guy. It's a film that evokes that feeling, I think, on a contagious level. It really spreads when you have an audience that is triggered into a feeling of happiness like that, where you're all feeling the same thing. One of the first really big laughs in the movie, it's not a spoiler, folks, but one of the first really big laughs is when Marty McFly, who we'll talk more about, is still getting used to the fact that he's just time traveled back to 1955. And a car pulls into a service station and 4 uniformed attendants descend on it out of nowhere to wash the windows and white wall tires and check the oil. It's a surefire laugh every time I've ever seen it. And it's a sight gag. There's no dialogue necessary.
It's hard to know where to start with Back to the Future. So we should
let's start with the fact that it was the #1 box office film of that year, 1985. So your opinion and my opinion were echoed by millions of other people who saw and enjoyed the film.
Do you have a core memory of when you first saw the film, Leonard?
No, I don't. So many films I can tell you the name of the theater I saw them at and what the circumstances were. And in this case, I can't. I'm sorry.
I'm thinking about the anticipation leading up to it, because it's got a lot of elements that, sort of make it, if not necessarily a must-see, then want to see.
Well, yes, but as with other movies we've been discussing, what seems surefire now, in retrospect, in hindsight, was not surefire then. Huey Lewis and the News were not hit makers yet. Michael J. Fox was not a proven movie box office star yet. Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis, who co-wrote it and co-produced it, and Zemeckis directed it, had some success, but they were not invincible.
No.
They were not considered in the same league as their colleague and co-producer at times, Steven Spielberg. And even Mr. Spielberg had stumbled a bit by this time. He had enough experience by then that he no longer was pitching a perfect game, if I may stretch an unfortunate sports metaphor.
But it seemed like Spielberg was maybe, at least in the marketing, the key selling point. I mean, it's very much billed as Steven Spielberg presents Back to the Future. They're not necessarily saying Michael J. Fox in or Robert Zemeckis film or anything like that. But you're right. I mean, it feels like this was the movie that really turned the key for all those people in a lot of ways. For Huey Lewis, for Michael J. Fox, for Zemeckis and Gale, for Alan Silvestri, who did the score, for the supporting cast as well. I mean, it seemed like everyone was off to the races after Back to the Future.
Yes, it did all of that and more. And again, with hindsight, I guess this film has more familiar backstory elements than your average movie. I'm sure fans know a lot of what we're going to be talking about, like the fact that it was recast after 6 weeks of shooting with Eric Stoltz, very talented young actor who starred in The Mask. Zemeckis, I mean, I can't imagine what it was like for him as the director to summon the courage, the nerve, whatever you want to call the intestinal fortitude, to call Steven Spielberg on the phone and say, we need to recast this. It's not working. It's just not working. And after 6 weeks, just not unprecedented, but unbelievable that could happen. But they had always wanted Michael J. Fox.
They did, didn't they? Yeah.
He was busy shooting his TV series. And Gary David Goldberg, the producer of that show, was inclined to help him try to make it work, but he was carrying too much of the story load of that half-hour show, that really popular show, and they just couldn't figure out how to do it. And when the opportunity arose where they could shift some of the storylines to other characters on the series, that's how Michael J. Fox came to do it. And unbelievably, he worked a full day shooting a sitcom at Paramount Studios, and then shot all night, because it was mostly night shoots at Universal, which is not too far geographically, but I don't know how. You got to be young.
Oh, absolutely.
Start with that. You got to be young. But he was doing double duty during the entirety of this shoot. It's amazing.
Have you seen any of the footage online of Stoltz playing Marty McFly?
No.
I've only seen bits and pieces of it as well. And I mean, Eric Stoltz, as you mentioned, he's an actor that I think everybody likes. He's worked for a very, very long time. And he's also a funny actor. He's hilarious in Pulp Fiction. He's got some great cameos in some Cameron Crowe films that show that he's not bereft of a sense of humor, but I think Back to the Future required a very specific kind of sense of humor. Even, and I don't want to downgrade it by saying this, but a very sitcom-y style sense of humor. And Stoltz just seems out of sync with it. He seems just, his humor is maybe a little too subtle for it, or because this is a broad stroke mainstream multiplex kind of picture.
Let's face it, Guy, once you've seen the person or persons who star in a movie, it's almost impossible to picture anybody else. We play that game all day. Who almost played this character? Who almost played that character? And almost doesn't count because once we're accustomed to who became that character, they own it. They own the character.
That's true.
And that's the magic of movies and television. But one other thing about this film that I realized in revisiting it just yesterday is that it's a 1985 film. It is perhaps the last or one of the last great analog movies. CGI had not yet been developed, and there are actually very few special effects shots in the film. And what shots there are were executed the old-fashioned way, photochemically, and by using ingenuity on the set. Today, if they were remaking it today, and incidentally, apparently Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis have written it into their contracts that they can't remake it. No one can remake this film.
The smartest move ever made.
It would look different from the get-go. But instead, how does it open? It opens with a slow camera pan along a shelf full of clocks. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Clocks that have been running on a battery, clocks that have been hand-wound, I'm sure. All sorts of devices. And they're all going a little haywire. The coffee maker, the automatic coffee maker, spills. The dog food plops onto the floor, which is already lined with other dog food from days gone by. The toast burns in the toaster. That's how the movie opens. And it almost is setting us up for the fact that we're going to be dealing with time, first off. Time is the main theme running through the film. Lack of time, need for time, synchronizing time, every facet of time. And it's like a little miniature symphony or fugue, if you will, to put us in the right frame of mind.
They often say a good movie teaches you how to watch it, and I think, Back to the Future does that from the very beginning. I like what you said about it being an analog film as well. And I mean, of course, we tend to think of Back to the Future as, I guess, a sci-fi comedy. There's not really the whole time travel conceit aside, which is central to it. It's really more of like a screwball comedy, a comedy of manners than anything else. I mean, the sci-fi aspect is sort of incidental, or it gets the plot in motion, but otherwise you're dealing with how these characters interact with another, all these misunderstandings, everything that sort of results from that.
You're right. I agree completely. And it's very much in the style of the earlier films that had been written by Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis. Bob Gale is the forgotten man, because Zemeckis both directed and wrote their early films. But he's a very talented fellow who was a full partner with Zemeckis in crafting and creating these nutty screenplays like I Want to Hold Your Hand and Cars. And they all have this sort of larger-than-life or kinetic quality. Sometimes I think of them as a manic quality. And this film benefits from that, too.
Yeah. Stuff like I Want to Hold Your Hand, and particularly Used Cars, which is one of my favorite American comedies of the 80s. I mean, it's just...
I love Used Cars.
It's fantastic. But they really do seem like throwbacks to even the earlier era that you were talking about, like the 30s and the 40s. I mean, they feel like sort of souped up, slightly vulgar, certainly in the case of Used Cars, Capra movies or Preston Sturges movies, but they've got that real conceit about them, but in a very 80s framework. And I guess Back to the Future falls into that as well. They wrote 1941 for Spielberg as well, is that right? Yeah. So, I mean, the movies that we just talked about with from those two guys, yeah, not necessarily hits, though. I mean, I think I Want to Hold Your Hand and Used Cars have become more well regarded as time has gone by. Even people are trying to reclaim 1941. I'm not sure how that project's going to go.
Yeah, I just read an essay online about that.
But Zemeckis became...
seen it since it was new. I saw it when it was new, and I liked things in it. But it didn't come together as a movie, and I guess I have to get myself to watch it again.
Yeah, well, even masters have their blind spots. I don't think, I don't think that sort of big, broad stroke comedy is Spielberg's forte. But Zemeckis was hot off Romancing the Stone, which was not, a collaboration with Bob Gale, but I think that really showed that he was the kind of guy you could trust with a mainstream crowd-pleasing property.
Right, he was not a one-trick pony. He could do something other than the manic, kinetic comedy that he and his partner were becoming known for. And once you know the movie, it's the kind of movie that is fun to watch again with the knowledge that you've acquired from your first screening. Because we start in the present day, which is 1985 in this case, and we go back to 1955. And when you see the town square in the establishing scenes of the movie, and you see how it changed over those 30 years' time, you get a lot of ideas about what's going through the writer's head. Yeah. What's going through their minds, rather, as they're making this jokey fantasy.
Do you think most of that stuff... Do you think that occurred to you during your first watching, or was your first reaction just one of like we talked about, just an immediate hit of joy and thrill, almost like a bit of an adrenaline rush that you're getting this, just wonderful comedy? Or
well, I think the adrenaline rush is the instantaneous knee-jerk reaction, and that's enjoyable and fun and satisfying, and it's what you go to the movies for with your friends. And you'll end up having a good time. But I think when you revisit the movie, and it's a movie that invites you to come back, you understand that ladies who are trying to raise money to save the clock tower have good reason to be marking that landmark in the local town square. And the fact that the local movie theater is now a porno theater. And even the fact that when Marty goes home for dinner, they're watching Jackie Gleason and the Honeymooners on TV in its original broadcast, 1955. All of these things, the film is so packed with hints and clues and Easter eggs that you can watch it repeatedly and enjoy it all the more for being in on the jokes.
Yeah. And it's so airtight. I mean, you could try to pick nits or find plot holes or anything like that, and I don't know, it's... just so well constructed.
Yes, it is. And that's a rarity nowadays. Construction of that quality, the craftsmanship, you might say, of building a screenplay that has so many interlocking pieces. We don't take that for granted anymore, if we ever did, because it makes it a rare bird.
To me, it also felt like, now admittedly I was 16 at the time when I saw this, but in hindsight, it feels like maybe the first modern time travel story, in that when you think about time travel, say back in 1985, you'd be thinking of, say, Mark Twain's Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, or H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. People are going very far into the future, or they're going way, way, way back into time. Marty McFly only goes back 30 years, which for guys like you and me, Leonard, that seems like a snap. For younger audiences, they may like, well, that seems like forever. But yeah, I mean, going back to, say, the era of like American Graffiti, it's not necessarily that far, and it's not much of a stretch. So I think audiences in 1985 were probably thinking, this is a future that some of us remember, or a past that some of us remember, sorry. Indeed,
you're right. And there are so many interesting facets of it, including the awareness of civil rights and the progress that was made during that 30-year stretch. The fact that their African-American friend does get elected mayor, as unlikely as that seems in 1955. That's right. 1985, it's nothing out of the ordinary. The other modern conveniences and things that we see, every gag pays off. Every gag lands, as they say. It all works. Yeah. It all clicks. And don't go looking for faults. Don't go looking for anachronisms. Don't go looking for things to nitpick, because there, as you said before, there's barely a nit to pick.
Yeah.
And Michael J. Fox is just right. And the casting of his parents, perfect. And the fact that we first meet them in the present day, in the 1985 version of events, is really pretty funny, because they took 23-year-old Lea Thompson and aged her 30 years in a rather conspicuous way. and then Crispin Glover, one of the all-time great eccentric actors in American film, is just as awkward and as odd as a guy can be. And it turns out there are reasons, and there are cause and effect properties of the storyline, which we won't give away, even though it's so many years in release now, but I still don't want to spoil anything.
Glover, I think, is vital to the movie's success, because, I mean, he really provides that X factor, or that wildcard factor, that any great movie or any quote-unquote flawless movie needs, in that he could really derail this. He is really sort of pushing the envelope here, and he goes one or two steps further and is like, you know what's great is Back to the Future, except for that Crispin Glover guy, he just derails the whole thing. He takes it just far enough.
Well said, Guy. You're right on the money there, because that was kind of a risk, casting him in that part in a mainstream, big-time studio movie. He was perfect in The River's Edge, which is an indie movie with indie sensibilities. But this is a big-time Universal Pictures release, and was chancy enough to do what they did.
It pays off, though, in the end, though. I mean, I think at the end, when he and Lorraine are having their dance at the end, Zemeckis does something very wise. There's a hero shot of him. I'm not talking about the big heroic moment. I'm talking about like a more romantic moment. He is shot and lit like a movie star from the 1940s. It's I get it. Oh, this kid's actually incredibly handsome. So, but yeah, between Lea Thompson, who I think is just marvelous as well. She's got a really wonderful sense of comic timing. I mean, yeah, very, very delicate and very, very funny and in sync with everybody else. Tom Wilson as Biff Tannen is remarkable. Christopher Lloyd is fantastic. Yeah.
We haven't talked about Christopher Lloyd yet.
Let's do so.
There is no movie without Christopher Lloyd. He is so much the heart and soul of this film, to my way of thinking, as Doc Brown. His look is fantastic. Somewhere I read he saw it as a cross between Albert Einstein and Leopold Stokowski. And if you know what those two fellows look like, it's a good description, which I borrowed from someone else. It's not original with me. But he grounds the film in a kind of a nutty reality. You have to believe that he believes everything he's saying, and he is true to his word and true to his goals and achieving those goals, or else you won't buy the movie. But he pulls that off. When I live right near Universal Studios here in Los Angeles, edge of the San Fernando Valley, and when they did a Back to the Future ride, I was on a press junket for that ride, and they had filmed a prelude to the ride that they showed on video monitors while you were waiting in line to keep you amused. And there he is again as Doc Brown. No time has gone by. He's still Doc Brown, and giving it 100%. I don't think he ever phoned in a performance in his life. He takes the big swing and goes for it.
I know we were talking about the folly of recasting or anything like that, but there's always these documents going around of studio heads or studio casting directors saying, these are people we have in mind for this performance. And I remember seeing one for Doc Brown that had a list of names. Some seemed quite apt and appropriate. Some seemed like, I don't know what you're thinking. But some that leapt out were like, they were thinking of Kevin Kline, who struck me as a bit young at that stage. They were thinking of Mickey Rourke, which is like, how did he get on this list? Maybe the one that made any sense at all was probably John Lithgow. But yeah, you're right. Christopher Lloyd is really just ideal casting in this regard.
He was born to play that character.
He was indeed.
And I think he knows it too, because he never resents being asked about Doc Brown. And I think he accepts that as a piece of flattery, actually.
as big a star as Fox and the other human stars are of this movie, I think the most valuable player of this movie is probably the DeLorean.
Yes, indeed. I saw it in person not too many years ago. I introduced a screening of this movie here in L.A. at what was originally the United Artists Theater on Broadway downtown, built in 1926. And they had a showing. We had several of the supporting cast members there. And they had the DeLorean parked in front. And it is a sight to behold. It really is what the gull wing doors. It's the doors that make that car so special, so memorable, seems to me. And while my memory fails me sometimes, I can never forget what speed it had to hit in order to time travel. 88 miles per hour.
It's incredible how much stuff has sort of become part of the vernacular.
Yes.
I think something else that's become quite iconic is Alan Silvestri's music as well.
Yes.
That incredibly rousing. I can hear the riff in my head. I'm not going to annoy the listeners or disrespect Mr. Silvestri by doing it. But it picks you up and sweeps you along with it, doesn't it?
It does. And they've done a Broadway musical based on this film.
Oh, my gosh.
Which opened, I think, either last year or the year before, which I've not been lucky enough to see. I haven't been back to New York to catch up on my Broadway. But I'm very happy for Alan because Alan and I grew up in the same town, went to the same high school. He's a good guy. And he and Robert Zemeckis have had a decades-long collaboration.
Any good movie with a few years on the meter, you're going to find some people, they'll come out of the woodwork and say, well, maybe this doesn't work, or this is a little iffy, by 2024 standards. There's not too much about Back to the Future you can say is quote-unquote problematic, but I think the only problem people might have is like, so Marty McFly did rock and roll? We're going to write Chuck Berry out of the history books?
Granted.
Leonard, what do you think of the sequels? We do have Back to the Future Parts 2 and 3.
Well, not a lot, I'm afraid. They went back to the well 2 more times, which takes a bit of nerve. And I really dislike Part 2, but I think they recovered a bit in Part 3.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, for some reason, they're just movies I can't really get behind. But 3, I don't mind so much. It feels like just a tribute to an old-fashioned Western.
Yeah.
2, I've never really been able to warm to. But for mine, it's kind of like it's like the Terminator franchise. I think when you make one perfect time travel movie that works as its own thing and its own closed loop, any efforts to expand on that, you're going to start tripping yourself up a bit. Even if you make a great sequel like Terminator 2, you're going to get into the weeds.
Yeah, I'm sensitive about that because I saw the Terminator before it opened, and I knew nothing about it. I went into it, my favorite way to watch a movie. I knew nothing about anybody involved with the film. Walked into a screening one morning, sat down, and was blown away. And to me, one of the things that I love about that movie is it was made by a bunch of young, hungry people. They were reaching. Some might say overreaching, but I don't think so. I think they reached and grasped what they wanted to do and presented it to us. Terminator 2 was made by well-fed, well-paid people who were also trying to push the envelope, obviously, and did succeed to a great degree. But to me, it doesn't have the scrappy spirit of the original. I think that's true of this one, too.
I think we're going to have to talk about Terminator next. I'm not envious of many people, but seeing the Terminator completely blind, not knowing anything about it is just optimum. Just exactly what you need. There's nothing like a good double feature, and I think we've maybe ruled out the Back to the Future sequels in this regard. But if you had to pair Back to the Future with another film for a nice evening at the cinema or on the couch, is there anything that you might recommend?
Well, nothing sprang to mind because this film is so original. It's not like any other film. It's not cut from someone else's cloth or borrowing, a central premise or idea. It's a one-off. That's why I didn't like the sequels, I think. Mm-hmm. But another one-off is Inner Space, a really ingenious film that doesn't lose its way and gives good parts to Martin Short and Dennis Quaid and a lot of other good people under the direction of Joe Dante.
Another Amblin production.
Another Amblin production indeed. Why don't you summarize what the film is about?
Inner Space. It's a bit like the late '60s sci-fi quote unquote classic, Fantastic Voyage, in which Raquel Welch and a team of other scientists are shrunk down to microscopic size, injected into the body of, I think it's like a diplomat or a foreign dignitary or something, who has got like some inoperable brain tumor, and if he dies, then the world is plunged into chaos, and so they have to go in and fix him from the inside. Inner Space riffs on that with test pilot Dennis Quaid, shrunk down to microscopic size. He's meant to be injected into, I think, a rabbit to sort of, prove the viability of this new technology, and he ends up inside Martin Short. and hilarity ensues.
What could be bad?
Try and find something wrong with that. Plus, you've got, I think, young Meg Ryan in there as well as the Lumpfish, and I think I was watching that going, who's this person? I'm going to watch them in just about anything. My choice for a double feature for Back to the Future, a little less highbrow, or maybe a little more lowbrow than yours, but this came out maybe 10 or so years ago, and it, to my mind, actually better than its title would suggest. It's called Hot Tub Time Machine.
You say it's better than its title would suggest. So you're making a judgment call there, Guy.
Leonard, we are critics here.
Get your mind out of the gutter.
No, what, I think I'm better than Hot Tub Time Machine? Come on. But this is, again, a sort of, it's a riff on time travel stories, of course. It's also a riff on 80s teen comedy. So just as Back to the Future was looking back nostalgically at the 50s, but also maybe not that great, Hot Tub Time Machine has a bunch of guys in their 40s, desperate to reclaim the glory days of the 80s and 90s, go on a ski trip, enter a time machine, enter a hot tub that doubles as a time machine, find themselves back in the 1980s. A lot of fun to be had, but also maybe we don't have it so bad. It says a lot of fun stuff about nostalgia and sort of maybe the toxic influence of it, how it's fun to look back but don't spend your life doing so. A good story about male friendship with some really good comic performances led by John Cusack. It's got Crispin Glover in it as a nod to Back to the Future. Yeah, I mean, look, there are certainly, shall I say, racy elements to it, adult elements to it, but we're all grown-ups here, so yeah, maybe pair Back to the Future with Hot Tub Time Machine, or more ideally, do it with Inner Space. Take the Leonard recommendation. Take the L on this one.
We've given you options, folks, all right?
It's why we're here. Aptly, we tend to wrap this up, Leonard, by asking, is a movie timely, timeless, or both?
I think it's timeless. I think that this movie, as it has already stood the test of time since 1985, will never show its age because it was made at a certain moment in time. It launched briefly Huey Lewis and the News into the top 40 charts with The Power of Love and one other song that I can't remember. And it's not out to prove anything. It's not out to do anything but entertain. There's a tiny bit of social commentary thrown in, just as a little seasoning. I'm
going to agree with you, but I also think it might be both. I think it's very timeless, and for all the reasons you mentioned, very, very accurately. And maybe this is just because I saw it for the first time when I was 16 years old, but it strikes me as a quintessentially mid-80s movie in terms of like, it's aspirational in a lot of ways. It's sort of presenting the American suburban dream as what you want, what you really want to go for. The casting of Fox is so astute in that regard between Marty McFly and Alex Keaton on Michael J. Fox. It's very much like he's the all-American go-getter, sort of aiming for the stars, taking big swings and all that kind of stuff. So it feels very 1985 to me, but it also feels like, well, I'm going to put this on again right now, and it's just going to be as fresh as it ever was.
Yeah, that's the feeling I get.
Leonard, I think that may be all the time we have, so to speak. So we'll wrap it up for this episode of the Movie Guide.
Are you suggesting that we're out of time?
What?
That's why he's paid the big bucks.
So we will wrap it up there. But I'm going to have to turn down these speakers because, in the words of Huey Lewis, Leonard, you're just too darn loud.
Thank you so much for your time today, Len. It's been fantastic hearing your thoughts on Back to the Future. Now, I'm not going to lie, seeing Guy's eyes light up the second you said that you'd seen Terminator before anyone even knew what Terminator was makes me suggest that we should probably do a discussion on Terminator in the coming weeks. So can we pencil that one in, do you think?
Well, sure. I have a bonus story that goes with it.
Oh, fantastic. It's interesting that you brought up that you guys both don't like Back to the Future 2, because as a 90s child, it just feels like Back to the Future 2 was the one that was always replayed on TV. So I've always had this nostalgic connection with Back to the Future 2, but I'm a baby. You guys know what you're talking about. But thank you again for listening to the show. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Guy, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Leonard.
You're very welcome.
And we'll catch you in the next episode of The Movie Guide.